Hello, my friends. It's Ranger Russ from the Meggs Point Nature Center. The Meggs Point Nature Center currently is closed, unfortunately, but we're continuing to do these programs. So you can see these programs live at 11 o'clock from Tuesday to Friday. And then occasionally, like yesterday, we get a really special program. So keep your eye out for those special programs that occur whenever I find something really cool. You can also see shorter special programs on Instagram, on ranger.russ on Instagram. And you can go to Meggs Point Nature Center on Instagram to see some quick updates as well. If you want to see our past videos, you can go to the Meggs Point Nature Center Virtual Learning Center, which is on the screen behind me. It's a little bright, so you can't really see that very well, can you? Or you can go to YouTube. You can go to the Meggs Point Nature Center YouTube channel and see our past videos as well. Now, today, you can see I've got all these really cool stuffed animals in front of me. What we're going to be doing is learning how to use and create a dichotomous key. Now, that's a really big word, but it's really very simple. We're going to oversimplify, and then we'll get a little more complicated as we go. So a dichotomous key is used by scientists and everybody else when you're trying to identify an animal. It could be a fish, a bird, anything that you're trying to identify, you could use a dichotomous key. And a dichotomous key are just a series of yes and no questions. Is it this or this? Very simple. Does it have a backbone? Yes or no? Okay? So that's where you want to start. Now, this is a very simple, basic dichotomous key that will get you to a general animal. This isn't going to be able to identify a specific animal, but we'll get into that in a little while. But first, I've got a pile of animals here in front of me, and if we were going to try and identify these animals, the first question, the most common one that's going to be able to divide all of these animals up is, does it have a backbone? Right off, we've got two animals that do not have backbones, so they go separate. These animals do have backbones, okay? And we're going to try and identify one of these animals. Let's pick... Let's do this one. This is the animal that we're trying to identify, but we're comparing it to other animals in the list. Okay? So the next question is, does it have fur or no fur? So this animal has fur, so that's a yes. This animal has feathers, that's a no. This animal has smooth skin, that's a no. And this animal has scales. So we're down to just 3 animals. Next question is, I'll show you again. Next question, feathers or no feathers? So we said this animal has feathers. It goes over here. This animal and this animal do not have feathers, so they go here. The next question, does it have dry skin or wet skin? So we look at this and we would say this one has dry skin, dry scales. So that goes there. This one has moist scales. So it goes here. And then the last question is, does it have scales or skin? So actually we could have a fish in here. Scales, that would make it this far. And it has skin, which means this is an amphibian. Okay? So this is just a general breakdown of how to use a dichotomous key. It's a series of yes and no questions, and it gets you down to, hopefully, the correct answer. Because sometimes you use the dichotomous key, it's a little more complicated than what we did. Now, if we were going to key out all of these things, these would be broken down into the basic animals. But if we were going to create a key that included these two, invertebrates, which this key doesn't have any invertebrates, the next question could be, so we've got two animals here, you could say something like, well, obviously the color is pretty close, so you don't want to use color. You need to use things that are obviously different. And the obvious difference between these two are the number of legs. This one has 5 legs, and this one has 8 legs. So if the next question would be, if it does not have a vertebrae, you could say, does it have 8 legs? In this case, it would be an octopus. Does it have 5 legs? In this case, it would be a sea star. So that's how you create and use a dichotomous key. Let's put those over there. Let's go to something a little more complicated. Now, what you want your end result to be on a dichotomous key is not the general thing like this, where it's just a bird, a reptile, or a fish. You would like to be more specific, and generally dichotomous keys go to species. And a species are a group of animals that are similar in anatomy, physiology, and ability to reproduce. What that means is they look alike, they're internally put together alike, and when two of them are together, they can reproduce. So if we had something like a dog and a sheep, they cannot make babies. Those are two different species. They also look very different, and internally they are very different. Now, if you're trying to key out, so let's say we've keyed out a fish, we know that it's a clownfish, okay? But there are different kinds of clownfish. So here we've got 3 clownfish. You can't really say that it's orange. That's not a very good question because they're all orange. You could say, well, one of them is bright orange, so is it bright orange or a dull orange? But you might see this and say, this is a bright orange and this is a bright orange, but this is not bright orange. I might look at it and say, these two are not bright, but this one is. So you need to have things that are very definable, that everybody would see it in the same way. And the obvious difference between these 3 species of clownfish, there is a really good way to tell here. And it's the dorsal fin. The dorsal fin is the fin on the back of the fish. This one has 1 dorsal fin. This one has 2 dorsal fins. This one has 2 dorsal fins that are connected. So this is technically 2 separate fins connected a little bit in the middle there. Okay? Or you could say it's 1 giant dorsal fin. But that's a good question that you could put. You could also say something like, does it have a black stripe on the tail? So this one has a black stripe. This one has a little black stripe. This one does not. So these are questions. This way you could get it to these 2. And then you could separate these 2 by the dorsal fin. Is it separated or is it connected? Okay? You can't go by things like how many stripes it has because they each have 3 stripes. What are some other things that wouldn't be very good? The pectoral fins. They each have 2 pectoral fins. So that's not a very good way to tell. So you need to find something that's different between them. And that is what makes a good dichotomous key. This way we can identify the fish very specifically. And in the end, we would be able to name each of these 3 clownfish as a separate species. Okay? Now, occasionally, you get things that look different but are the same. So the black bear of Connecticut, and I've done a program on black bears, and I talked a little bit about all the different colors that black bears come in. Because, yes, most of them are black, but there are brown black bears, and there are blonde black bears, and there are black bears that are almost pure white. So there are different colors, but they are still the same species. They still have the same insides, and they can still reproduce or make babies. So here we have two bears that are completely identical except for the color of their fur. These would be the same species. So using fur color would not be a good way to identify them because you might come with one, but it's actually the same as the other. Okay. So you could also key out things that get a little more complicated. All right, so here we've got a couple of things that are pink, and then a red and a yellow. But the color would not be a good one to use for these animals either, just like the bear's color wouldn't be very good, because if you divide it out as these two are pink, if that's your question, is the animal pink? These two are both pink, but they're not the same. These two are both dogs. These two are both ducks, but two of them are the same color. So you might want to do something like, do they have feathers? These both have feathers. These do not have feathers. That would be a good question. Do they have external ears? If you look, the ducks don't have any external ears, but the dogs, they do. These are little tiny external ears, and then big floppy external ears. And then once you have them separated between ducks and dogs, you could separate them again and say, is one dog pink or red? And then you could identify. Okay, so this sounds really complicated. It is really very simple, though, as long as you know how to answer the questions that are on the list. So here I have a dichotomous key. This looks pretty complicated, but when we break it down, it's actually not that bad. So if we're identifying, this is for a turtle. So if we have a turtle in Connecticut, you can look at it and you say, the plastron has small shapes or cross shapes on it. So this is where you have to know about the animal that you're looking at. The plastron of the turtle is the bottom of the turtle. Some other questions might be the length of the tail. Does it have a long tail, and it describes how long the tail is, or a short tail? Those are good questions. And again, you need to know about the turtle that you're looking at to be able to identify it. So with these, this has 7 questions. With those 7 questions, you can identify all 8 turtles that are in Connecticut, as long as you can answer the questions. So a high domed carapace, that would be a box turtle. A very long tail, that would be a snapping turtle. So you would ask, does it have a long tail or a short tail? Snapping turtle is the only one. You've identified your snapping turtle. The other 7 are going to be in the short tail category. Does it have a high dome or a flat dome? The box turtle is the only one with a high dome, so you can identify, okay, now we have a box turtle, and now we've got 6 left to do. And does it have spots on the back of its shell? There are 2 that have spots, and then the rest are broken out. So that is how you use a dichotomous key. Scientists use them all the time. People that are trying to identify an animal, most field guides are a simplified version of a dichotomous key. So if you have a bird book, you look through it, it will divide the birds up by color, by size, by length of legs or length of bills. Those are all key features that can help you use a dichotomous key. Okay, do we have any questions? Let me see. Somebody says they're glad they saved their stuffed animals. That's pretty cool. You can do your own dichotomous key with it. Someone says they loved the crane video yesterday. So I will tell you on that crane video yesterday, I did look up their range, and technically Connecticut is part of their breeding range, but they are really still very rare in Connecticut. Usually they are north of us for the breeding season. All right. I am not seeing any other questions. So we're going to do one more quick breakdown. So if we had these three animals and we wanted to make a dichotomous key, the first thing that I would do is say, does it have long ears or short ears? This one has long ears. If it has long ears, it's a green bunny rabbit. Okay? Is it bright, multicolored, or single-colored? You could say if it's single-colored, it is a polar bear. If it is multicolored, it is a happy bear. I'm not sure what the name of this one is, but we'll call it the happy bear. So that's a quick and easy way that you can create your own dichotomous keys. You can do it. It's a fun thing to do at home. You can do it with socks. You can throw out a bunch of socks and break them down and see how you could identify your socks. You could use silverware or any sort of flatware kitchen utensils. So look around the house, find some similar things and see if you can break them down into the separate types that they are just by asking some simple yes and no questions. You can take turns. One of you can make the questions up and the other one can try and identify what you want them to identify. So that's a fun game that you can play. You can try and get the person to get to the right answer. It's sort of like a treasure hunt with the end being the correct animal of your list or the correct sock. So you'll have a whole bunch of socks. You have the key, that's your treasure map, and it leads you to the animal that you want identified. All right. The crane was cool. Everybody is really enjoying that crane. It was a really unique experience for me. I looked for the crane this morning. I looked for it last night before I left the park, and I didn't find it either time. Maybe it's still around. Maybe it's moved on. There was a report that there was one in Brantford, Connecticut. So this one could have moved from Brantford to here, and maybe it's moved further along the coast. So we'll keep an eye out for the crane in the future. Next party game, yeah, dichotomous keys for everyone. That sounds like a good time. Okay, I hope everyone's enjoying these programs. I'm still having fun doing them. I'll keep doing them as long as people are interested. We might add a program here or there, like yesterday's crane program, if something comes along that's really spectacular. I actually have to go. There might be some wild animals caught in a building right now, so I'm going to go see if I can help extricate those animals from the building. I might film that for you as well. So, wait, heard you mention snapping turtles. A few in my yard. 4 nests were dug up. When will they hatch? Great question. So the snapping turtles, it's like 30 days, I think, before they hatch. But there's something unique that snapping turtles do that most of the turtles in Connecticut are able to do. They will not all emerge from the nest in the fall. Some of them will spend the first winter in the nest. Some of them will come out. Some of them will stay. Sometimes an entire nest will stay underground for the first year. Maybe the entire nest will emerge, but there's no guarantee. So you could see them coming out in the fall. You could see or the end of the summer. You could see them coming out next spring. And they don't emerge as soon as they hatch out either. They could emerge, they could break out of their egg and then stay there. They actually have a yolk sac that attaches to their plaster on their belly, and it will stay there for a period of time, and they can live off of the yolk sac for that first winter or for a month or so. So they could emerge all at different times. So if you've got a turtle nest in your yard, try and keep predators away. Sometimes we put a fence around to keep the predators away, but keep an eye out because it could be over a long period of time that they're emerging out. So please watch out for those turtles, though. This is the time of year, especially along the coast, that the diamondback terrapins are coming out to lay their eggs. They're one of the last turtles to lay their eggs in Connecticut, and we see them. We had last week, I think we had 8 within 2 days. So lots of turtles out crossing the roads right now. Okay, again, this is Ranger Russ from the Meggs Point Nature Center. I will sign off for now. Keep an eye out. I might be doing a program later this afternoon, or tomorrow at 11 o'clock. We'll definitely be doing another program from the Meggs Point Nature Center. Thank you for tuning in.